The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. There are always reasons people will do business with you that have nothing to do with you. You happen to be the cheapest. You happen to show up at the right time. You happen to be the most convenient. That's not loyalty. There's a huge difference between repeat business and loyalty. Repeat business means I'm willing to do business with you over and over and over again. Loyalty means I'm willing to turn down a better product at a better price and maybe even suffer inconvenience to continue to do business with you. And it's the loyal customers that make an organization successful. Highly successful. So you flash forward a few years, and the big airlines, Delta and United, see this business model and they think, we need us a low-cost airline. And I have no issue with that. You can have as many products as you want. That's market-driven. And so they started TED and Song. And they copied how Southwest did it. This is the concept behind best practices. I know a company down the street with fantastic morale. They have a ping pong table in every conference room. Does that mean if you put a ping pong table in every conference room, your morale goes up? No. That's best practices. Just because it worked for somebody else doesn't mean it'll work for you. First, you have to know why you do what you do. So, United and Delta look at Southwest, and they copied how they did it. They started TED and Song, and they made those airlines cheap, fun, and simple. And I flew TED and Song, and they were cheap. And they were fun, absolutely. And they were simple. And they failed because we didn't know why they existed. The only thing we had to judge them on was price, service, quality, features, the stuff of commodities. And when it was close, yeah, I flew them. But people who believe what you believe, the loyal ones, when the price is just a little bit higher or it's just a little bit inconvenient, they choose you. Even people who love Southwest Airlines, of course they also flew the other ones. The difference was when it was close, they always chose Southwest. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. I flew Southwest a few months ago and I was standing in line to get on the plane, and a woman in front of me turns to me and says, I love Southwest. I didn't ask. And it's those weird spontaneous outbursts that you can tell somebody's loyal because they're not telling you about the airline, they're telling you about themselves. This is sometimes why when I say, who here owns a Mac? Somebody goes, hey! I just wanted a show of hands. It's because they're telling you about who they are. People tattoo Harley Davidson logos on their body. Some of them don't even own the product. It's a corporate logo. But it's not. It's become a symbol. It's become a symbol for a set of values and beliefs. And because Harley Davidson is so clear in what they believe, the rebellious spirit, that rebellion spirit, and everything they say and everything they do proves it. And they're really strict about the things they say and the things they do and the things that they put their name on, so as not to miscommunicate anything. People who believe in that Harley Y put that logo there, not because they love the company, it's because it tells you something about who they are. And we all know what it means also. Whether you believe in the Harley Y or not, we all know what it means. That's why when somebody walks into a bar with a big Harley Davidson logo on their arm, we give them a wide berth. It's not what you do that matters, it's why you do it. I'll tell you one more quick story about Southwest that's remarkable. After September 11th, Southwest started receiving checks in the mail, some as high as $1,000. And one of the letters that accompanied one of the checks said, over the years, you've been so good to me. In these hard times, I hope I can help you. Now, the amount of money they took in clearly didn't affect the bottom line at all. However, how many companies can raise their hand and say that their customers spontaneously send them checks just to say thank you? That's remarkable. That's called loyalty. And the reason you want to do business with the loyal ones, and you want to focus on loyal ones, is because of something called the law of diffusion of innovations. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. What the law of diffusion of innovations tells us is the first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are our early majority, then our late majority, then our laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all fit somewhere on here at various times for various reasons. And what the law of diffusion tells us is that this population, the innovator and early adopter population, are very comfortable making gut decisions. They're very comfortable trusting their intuition. These are the people who spent $40,000 or $50,000 when flat-screen TVs came out, even though the technology was substandard. These were the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy the iPhone when it first came out, even though you could just walk into the shop the next week and buy one right off the shelf. It had nothing to do with how good the technology was. It's because they wanted to be first. Do you think people would stand in line for 6 hours to buy a phone from Dell? It'll never happen. Even if it's the greatest phone in the world, it'll never happen because nobody knows what they believe. This population, the majority, is more practical. They do care about things like price and service and quality and features, absolutely. The problem is, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. This is why we have to drop our price or offer promotions or value added, because we have to reduce their risk tolerance so that they'll choose us over somebody else. These people happily pay a premium or suffer an inconvenience simply because they want to be associated with something that shares their beliefs. What the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that you cannot have mass market success or mass market acceptance for an idea until you achieve between 15 or 18% market penetration. This is a tipping point. It's easy to get about 10%. We say that about the people we work with. We have about 10% of our employees who get it. And no matter how badly we screw things up, they are loyal. Same of our clients. The problem is 10% is not enough. And as Jeffrey Moore in his book, Crossing the Chasm, calls it, it's that little chasm there that's so hard to fill. And that's because people instinctively market themselves to this audience and not this one. They talk about what they do and not what they believe. I'll give you 2 examples. One's a business example and one's a social example. One's a failure and one's a success. TiVo, in the United States, the digital video recorder company, had what we consider the recipe for success. If you ask almost any company, why did that product fail? Why did that effort fail? Why did your company fail? They usually give you some combination of the same 4 reasons. Not enough money, undercapitalized, right? Bad market conditions, just bad timing, the world conspired against us. We had the wrong people, poorly executed. We just didn't do it right. Right? Usually it's that some combination is always the explanation we give as to why something failed. So let's explore that deeper. TiVo, as a company, when they introduced their product about 9 years ago, from the day the product was introduced onto the market, plus they invented it, so they had the first mover's advantage, when they first introduced the product to the market, to this current day, the TiVo product is the single highest quality product on the market. No one will dispute that. Their quality is through the roof. It's the best technology. So execution, flawless. They are extremely well funded with venture capital, and their market conditions are fantastic. In the United States, the unaided awareness of the word TiVo is through the roof. In fact, we use it as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my DVR at home, even if you don't own a TiVo. Market conditions are brilliant. TiVo is a financial failure. They've never made money. And when the company went public and their stock went IPO, it launched at about $40 or $50. It plummeted, and except for a couple of little blips, it's never traded above $6. The problem was, you see, TiVo took their perfectly good idea with perfectly high quality and perfectly good service and perfectly good features, and they told the general population what the product does. They said to the general population, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, and records on your behalf without you even asking. And the cynical, practical majority said, I don't need it. I don't like it. I don't believe you. You're scaring me. And so they didn't buy one. About 10% of the population did that really love it, but that just wasn't enough. Imagine if TiVo had launched their product this way. If you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, and records on your behalf without you even asking. In this case, what the product does and its features and benefits are the proof of why you need it and not the reasons to buy. It's not what you do that matters, it's why you do it, and what you do serves as the tangible proof of what you believe. Now I'll give you a famous success. It's a social example. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up in Washington, D.C. to hear Martin Luther King give his famous I Have a Dream speech. There were no invitations sent out, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? I mean, how many people are here? 240 people are here today, and you all got an invitation and checked the website. How do you do it for 250,000 with nothing? Martin Luther King was not the only man in America who knew what had to change to bring about equality in that country. He wasn't. Some of his ideas were bad. He didn't go around telling people what we need to do, what we need to do. He wasn't the only great speaker of the day. And he wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, he suffered less. He was off at university. He wasn't the perfect man either. He had his complexities. We just don't talk about those things. But he had a gift. He had a gift. He went around and he told people what he believed. I believe. I believe. I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took that belief and they made it their own. And they told people what they believed. And those people who believed what they believed took that belief and made it their own. And they told people what they believed. Like that woman who spontaneously told me that she likes Southwest. She was telling me what she believes. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time, to hear Dr. King speak. How many of them showed up for Dr. King? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America, and it's the country that they wanted to live in, and it's the country that they wanted to raise their children in, that inspired them to get on a bus and travel for 8 hours and stand in the sun in the middle of August in Washington to hear him speak. Simply showing up was one of the things that they did to prove to the outside world what they believed. And by the way, Dr. King gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. It's not what you do that matters, it's why you do it. I think I only have time for 2 more stories. I'll tell you 2. Okay. I'll tell you a couple more stories. As I said before, the goal is not to do business with anybody and everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Find the people who believe what you believe, and they are the ones who are loyal. They are the ones who will tell other people to do business with you. But before it can work on the outside, it has to work on the inside. If the people who work for you don't know why you do what you do, then no one else will ever know why you do what you do. So how do you hire people who believe what you believe? How many of you have heard of Ernest Shackleton? 1 or 2? 1, 2. Yes. Prize. Ernest Shackleton was a turn-of-the-century English explorer. He was famous for an expedition he took on the ship, the Endurance. And the reason the expedition is famous is because the Endurance was stranded on the Antarctic ice for 22 months. And no one died Their success was not lucky. Their survival was not lucky. It was guaranteed because Shackleton hired good fits. How did he hire them? He did exactly what we do. He took out an ad in the newspaper or Monster or whatever website that you use. It's the same idea. Now, what do we usually say when we take out an ad in the newspaper? We say what we're looking for, right? Art director needed, minimum 5 years experience, must have working knowledge of Photoshop and Illustrator, come work for a fantastic, fast-growing company. And you're inundated with people who have those skills, and good luck finding the one who believes what you believe. Shackleton took out an ad in the newspaper. His ad did not say, men needed for expedition, minimum 5 years experience, must know how to hoist a mainsail, good time guaranteed for all. Here's what his ad said. Men needed for hazardous journey, long hours, bitter cold, long dark nights, survival, doubtful. If success, honor guaranteed. The only people who applied for the job were people who read the ad and went, cool. The only people who applied for the job loved insurmountable odds. They were survivors. Their survival on the ice for 22 months was guaranteed because Shackleton hired good fits. Then the question was, do I want to hire people who know how to hoist a mainsail or not? Or can I teach them that later? Herb Kelleher, one of the founders of Southwest Airlines, said, you hire people for attitude. You can always teach them the skills later. The problem is, which attitude? I love asking companies, who do you hire? And the CEOs always say, we only hire passionate people. And I always ask, how do you know that they're passionate for interviewing but not so passionate for working? Everyone on the planet is passionate. We're just not passionate for the same things. And so when you talk about what you believe, you will attract people who are passionate for what you're passionate about. When you talk about what you believe, you will attract people who believe what you believe. Why? Because it ensures their own personal survival, because they want to be around people who are like them. It's called culture. It's called community. It's not what you do that matters. It's why you do it. I'll give you the one example about the trust, which blows my mind. What's our most valued possession on the planet? Our children, right? Our children are our most valued possession on the planet. So let's say you want to go on a date, and you need a babysitter, and you have two options. The first option is a 16-year-old who lives down the street from your community with no babysitting experience. The other option is a 32-year-old who just moved to the community, you don't know from where, but she's got 10 years of babysitting experience. Who do you choose? The 16-year-old. Oh, it's only the Swiss. Everywhere else in the world, they choose the 16-year-old. I'm serious. This usually goes very well. So everywhere else in the world, when they choose a 16-year-old, I always find that remarkable. Because the point is that people will trust somebody with their children who shares their values and beliefs over somebody with vast experience. Right? Except in Switzerland. Note to self. What's that? It probably won't work in Austria either. The whole point is, everywhere else, is that this thing commands vastly greater loyalty and capacity for trust. I mean, if we really adjusted it for real reasons, I mean, I use extreme examples, which is a 16-year-old who's from your community who has a little babysitting experience versus somebody who you don't know who has lots of experience. I mean, the answer is still the same, right? And I still find that remarkable, that we would rather trust somebody with less experience, but that we know they believe what we believe, over somebody with vast experience, if we don't know where they come from and what they believe, is the point. So even the Swiss are okay. But then we do it differently at work. At work, we're more obsessed with your resume and what your experience is and what you've done from somebody else, and yet we never evaluate what you believe. And so you can hire somebody with vast experience, but how do you know what they believe? Yet we trust our children, our most valued possession, with a very different standard, where we truly care about where the person comes from. And yet we don't treat our employees the same way. That's amazing to me. Why is the standard different? That's amazing to me. It's not what you do that matters, it's why you do it. All businesses, all organizations, even our careers, function on 3 levels. It's a 3-piece puzzle. What you do, how you do it, and why you do it. The problem is, most people don't even know that why exists. And it's not because it doesn't exist, it's just because it exists in the part of the brain that controls behavior and feelings and decision-making. It just doesn't control language. And so we call it fluff sometimes. This is where brands exist, right? This is why we say people buy on an emotional level. What does that mean? And people who don't get it don't understand that. And it's hard for us to communicate that people aren't rational. They're emotional in their decision-making. That's because the part of the brain that controls emotions controls decision-making. It's very simple. The problem is then, if you don't even know that this exists, then your organization is operating on only 2 parts of a 3-part puzzle, which means you're inherently out of balance. Or your career is functioning on 2 parts of a 3-part puzzle. We're making jobs because they pay us the most, but not necessarily because we fit or belong there. And the way that shows up, if an organization or a person is out of balance, is stress. You have to work harder at things that usually don't require a lot of work. You lose your passion. You don't enjoy going to work. You're constantly comparing yourself to how everybody else is doing. Somebody else is making more money. That company's doing better than we are. Worried about your competition constantly. You're forced to play price when you don't want to. These are all just symptoms of when an organization is functioning on 2 levels out of a 3-piece puzzle. There's a young kid by the name of Ben Coman. Ben has cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is when your muscles are withered and your bones are brittle and your joints are weak and your balance is poor, your body is broken. When Ben was in high school, he was on his high school track team. This is not usually a common combination. And when everyone else would finish their race in 21 minutes, Ben would finish in 45. And when he would run, he would fall over a lot because his balance was poor. And eventually, when he would cross the finish line, he'd be covered in mud and bloody and bruised and exhausted. This is not a story of when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. This is not a story of when you fall over, you pick yourself back up. Those are great lessons to learn. We can learn those from some Olympic athlete who breaks their leg and 6 months later comes back and wins a gold medal. Ben's lesson is vastly more profound. Because you see, after 21 minutes, something happens. After 21 minutes, when everyone else is done with their race, they come back and run with Ben. And he's the only runner that when he falls over, someone else picks him up. And he's the only runner that when he crosses the finish line, there's 100 people running behind him. The lesson that we learn from Ben is that if you try to compete against everyone else, no one wants to help you. But if you wake up every day to compete against yourself, everyone wants to help you. Now think about how we do business. We always want to be better than somebody, faster than somebody, stronger than somebody, quicker than somebody. Why not just be better than yourself? Why not try and improve how you work and what you do? I learned this from Ben, and it profoundly changed the way I even present myself. Now, when somebody says to me, what makes you better than your competition? My answer is, I don't know that I am. It's definitely not in every circumstance. And they say, well, then why should we hire you? And I say, well, the work I'm doing now is much better than the work I was doing 6 months ago. And the work I'm going to be doing in 6 months is going to be even better than the work I'm doing now. Because the only thing I care about is why I do what I do. My cause is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. It's why I wake up every day. And for me, the challenge and the fun is to think of all the different ways that I can bring that to life, whether I teach or speak or consult or advise or write. It doesn't matter. What matters is that every single day I wake up to do this. And when they say to me, well, fine, we'll hire you in 6 months then, I go, sounds good to me. There are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence, and those who lead inspire us. And whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. Those who lead always know why, and that's inspiring. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.